The DA made history with a township by-election win. But is this part of a broader pattern? Let's find out. Last week, the DA enjoyed a massive by-election victory in Muellain, Ward 28. Now, for those who might not know, this is a 100% black voter township ward in Gauteng. And it's the first time in history that the DA has managed to pull off a win in a township such as this. Now, of course, there are quite a few things that people will be wondering. Firstly, is there a trend of the DA sustainably earning more and more black votes, especially in townships? Secondly, does it appear that this is something that the DA can continue to do? And thirdly, will wins such as these actually see the DA increase their overall percentage of the vote nationally and perhaps overtake the ANC as the country's biggest party? And we're going to look to answer these questions in this video. Now, before we get started, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? It's completely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below. If you would like to enjoy additional perks, such as members-only videos, you can become a Power Club member. All you have to do is click on the join button below. Now let's get into it. So the first thing that we need to look at is the by-election which just took place in Muellain. And as we can see here, the DA managed to win by just 8 votes, getting 1,001 votes, while the ANC came in second with 993 votes. Now, if we take a look at the graph to my right, we can see how the DA came up from 3rd place back in 2016 and has made a gradual ascent all the way until the present day. And if we take a look at the DA's historical results here, we see that in 2016's local election, they only got 369 votes, or 8.7%. In 2019, they got 488 votes, or 8.7%, which was still 8.7%, but it's important to remember that voter turnout is normally higher in general elections than municipal elections, so this makes sense. In 2021, they dropped a little bit, although they did get 14.2% of the vote, so the number of votes went down, but the percentage went up, again, due to a lower turnout due to municipal elections. And then in 2024, out of pretty much nowhere, they got their breakthrough, getting 1,040 votes in the provincial election, or 19.3%. Although the 1,001 votes they got in the 2026 by-election is a few less than the 2024 election, it's actually a very impressive result for them, because ultimately by-elections are expected to have a much lower turnout than general elections. And so they did a very good job of mobilizing their voter base on the ground and getting them to show up on election day. Now, let's just contrast the DA's results to that of the ANC, and we see a stark difference. I mean, back in 2016, look at how the ANC had over 2,700 votes, and then it went all the way up to 3,977 votes in 2019. And of course, on the graph, we see how massively it spikes up. Then all of a sudden in 2021, they pretty much collapsed, almost halving their votes to 1,666 votes. And then in 2024, they were able to restabilize a bit with 2,473 votes. But again, higher turnout because it's a general election, so there's no real surprise there. The most important thing to note, however, is that in the 2026 by-election, they went all the way down to 993 votes, which is less than half what they got just 2 years ago. And so what this immediately tells us is that the DA have done a very good job of driving voter turnout, whereas the ANC has just seen their voter turnout plummet all the way. I did think it very interesting to include the EFF and Patriotic Alliance as well, because they also obtained some pretty interesting figures. You see, historically, the EFF was the runner-up party in this ward, with the DA in 3rd place. And we see how in 2016 they had 851 votes, or 20%. 2019 they went up to 932. They pretty much capitulated in 2021 with just 534 votes. They had a slight recovery in 2024 with 743, but now with 389 votes, they're at their lowest ever total of just 12.47% of the vote. On the other hand, the PA have shown a very good improvement. They never competed in this ward before 2024, and in that election, they only had 35 votes, or 0.6%. Now, in this by-election, they got 261 votes, or 8.37%. And so, from being pretty much non-existent in this black-only ward, they're almost catching up to the EFF. And who knows, at this rate, if the trend continues, they'll actually overtake the EFF as the third-placed party. And of course, this could speak to a variety of factors. We do know that the PA are very good at mobilizing new voters and those who maybe didn't vote in the last election but have decided to return. And so it could be a factor of that. And then we also know that they're doing very well to resonate with a lot of people in townships and semi-urban areas due to their stance on illegal immigration. And so it could be an effect of that as well. But what I think is so important for us to also note is the voter turnout in this ward. So if we scroll down, we can see how voter turnout has dropped quite significantly. I mean, back in 2016, it was 59%. It went up to a massive 71.4% in the 2019 general election, came back down to 41.3% in 2021, recovered to 61.6% in 2024, but then went all the way back down to 35.79% in this by-election. And this yet again speaks to how well the DA actually did at getting their voters out. Because ultimately, what we can see from the figures in front of us is that the majority of voters who seemed to drop off in this by-election were from the ANC and the EFF. Hence why we see the number of voters drop from 5,387 to 3,160 in just 2 years. Now, of course, this is a very impressive result for the DA. Not only are they making inroads in a black township ward, but they're also proving that they're able to sometimes mobilize voters. And while voter turnout is dropping amongst established parties across the board, the DA are doing a much better job at retaining their support base compared to parties such as the EFF and the ANC. But this still begs a question, which is, are the DA actually able to attract more black voters, especially township voters, in other parts of the country as well? Or is this just an isolated incident? So last year, we actually saw a similar result in Muellain, Ward 26. Now, Muellain is a majority black area in Mpumalanga. And what we saw there was a very similar result where it's a traditional ANC ward. We can see from the graph that the ANC back in 2019 were way above the DA. And although the DA were able to win the ward in 2016, they really struggled in this ward ever since. But that was until the 2024 election. In 2024, they got more votes than the ANC, although the ANC still held the ward because that was a general election, not the municipal election. And then finally in the by-election, the DA just pipped the ANC, getting 839 votes compared to 809 for the ANC. So they only got 30 votes more. And this reflects what we just saw in Muellain, because the DA over there only won by 8 votes. Another interesting example is Govan Mbeki, Ward 14, which is also in Mpumalanga. So in this specific ward, the DA used to actually be the 4th placed party. And we saw that as soon as 2024 because of the rise of MK as well as the EFF. But as we take a look at the graph on the right, we can see how the DA has managed a very strong gradual growth, whereas the EFF has really been very turbulent in this ward, and MK have pretty much collapsed after just one election cycle. And as is the case in other wards, the ANC seems to gradually lose support over time, which really seems to be a slow-burning process. But ultimately, the DA did very well here, getting the most votes they ever did in 2025, and again, a very impressive result for them. I would then also like to look at eThekwini Ward 64 in KZN. Now, this is a ward where the DA has historically won, but in the 2024 election, the MK party actually got more votes than them, and so the DA was second here. But In the 2025 by-election, the DA recovered their support, and although they actually lost votes, because voter turnout dropped so much, they actually rose in percentage from 40.3% to 63.01%. And this was mostly at the expense of the MK. And so ultimately, while the MK were the most popular party in this ward in 2024, they lost the by-election, and the DA were able to retain their seats. And so what we ultimately see is this. Yes, to a large extent, the DA are managing to make inroads in township and majority black areas, specifically urban and on the urban periphery. And while these gains aren't necessarily massive, they are quite gradual, and the DA do seem to be able to be holding on to these voters once they get them. So it seems to be a gradual but a sustainable growth. The other thing that's working in the DA's favor is voter turnout. You see, although the DA isn't experiencing some explosive growth in these areas, parties such as the EFF and the ANC, as well as MK, are really plummeting in support. And so voter turnout in these places is dropping quite drastically, but it's dropping at the expense of those parties, not the DA. And so even if the DA is able to maintain their existing support level or drop gradually, it seems that their percentage will continue to go up. And that's something that we saw in the 2024 national election as well. And so the big question leading up to the municipal elections in November is this. Can the DA manage to recover their support in these areas, given that it does seem that they are bleeding support to the Freedom Front Plus and to a lesser extent the Patriotic Alliance? That's going to be the big question that we have to answer. And at this moment in time, while it does seem pretty inevitable that they will lose votes to the PA and the Freedom Front Plus, the DA could indeed make up for these votes with former ANC voters and perhaps other black voters as well. The big question and the big unknown at this moment in time is whether or not their new voters will be enough to replace the exiting ones. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.